Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome. We are gathered here sharing this virtual space in the virtual 41st Legislative District, throwing our first 2022 virtual town hall here gathered and joined by Representative My-Linh Thai, Representative Tana Senn, and Senator Lisa Wellman. So we're really excited to be joined in this virtual space. We sent out a SurveyMonkey poll. We've got a bunch of questions on the docket and a really great conversation planned for this evening. Without further ado, we'll kick it off over to introductions from Senator Wellman.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with my seatmates. And I am on the fourth floor of my tree house on Mercer Island. It's not really a tree house. It's just a very tall house in the trees on Mercer Island, part of the 41st, which is Mercer Island, Bellevue, Renton, Newcastle, and Sammamish. And telling a little bit about each of ourselves. I was elected in 2016 to the Senate and re-elected in 2020. I'm chair of the Early Learning K through 12 Education Committee in the Senate. I also sit on Energy, Environment, and Technology. And if you may remember, my background is in technology. I sit on Ways and Means, which I left to come here because I wanted to be with you. Also, some things that you may not know about me in terms of commissions or work groups that I'm on. There's so many work groups in the education space, you can't possibly believe it. But in addition to all of that, I sit on the Washington Arts Commission, which is very exciting. And I love the arts. And so it's really thrilling for me. The tax structure work group, which is really hard for me because I'm out of my comfort zone, but I think it's really important. And then I sit on the Lieutenant Governor's International Economic Development Work Group as well. And so there's a lot of things going on right now. I'm going to turn it over to my seatmate, My-Linh Thai, Representative. Hi, My-Linh.
Thank you, Senator Wellman. Hello, 41st. It is definitely an honor to serve you. I am calling from Mount Baker. And as you heard from Senator Wellman, it's not in the 41st in any shape or form. We are the family who are being displaced due to the home being collapsed, and hopefully that we'll be able to return home by the end of this weekend. So enough about me. I am serving on finance, public safety, and civil rights and judiciary. Because of those committees, a lot of the conversation I will be coming to you tonight is going to be around that. At the same time, as you know, when I was first elected to serve in this capacity in 2019, my heart has always been in education and healthcare. Just one bill that I'm extremely excited about in this session is House Bill 1852. This legislation is the first step for Washington State to look into how to ensure that direction of use is going to be translated on all prescription labels so that every single Washingtonian will have accessibility to not only patient safety, but be that active partner in their own care. With that, I'm going to kick the microphone over to my wonderful partners and mentor, Representative Tana Senn.
Thanks, My-Linh. I'm Tana Senn, State Representative from the 41st also, and thrilled to be here. I'm calling in from my home on Mercer Island. And I chair the Children, Youth, and Families Committee in the House. I also serve on the Local Government Committee. As Lisa mentioned, we've got the 6 cities and a town in our district. And so local government portfolio is really important. And I'm a former city council member on Mercer Island, for those who don't know. And I also serve on the Appropriations Committee, which is our budget committee. I also am the co-chair of the Moms Caucus, in the House for the House Democrats, and the Jewish caucus for the House Democrats. And so those are exciting. And in the community, I serve on the Hope Link board, and I'm the co-president of the National Association of Jewish Legislators as well. I am excited about two bills. I'll make it really quick. One is to expand school counselors and nurses at all schools. This is so exciting, having been a former Mercer Island Youth and Family Services Foundation board member. This is really one of the key issues I've been working on, as I know Lisa and My-Linh have too. So excited about it. And then the other one that's just near and dear to our constituents and some other folks that we have met to prevent hazing at colleges. 1751 is a really important bill that hits home for me as a mom with a college-age student myself. This is really important. We need to prevent hazing. So we will get into the meat of things. I just wanted to let people know a little bit of where we are in the legislative session, so you have some context. It's the short session, which is only about 3 months. We have passed House bills over to the Senate. The Senate has passed their House bills over to us, their Senate bills over to us, and now we're hearing those bills. And then yesterday, we, both the House and the Senate, released our budget, our operating budget, our transportation budget proposals, and our capital budget proposals. So we're also debating those at the same time. So that is where we are in the context of the legislature. We've just got a few more weeks, and we are now looking forward to answering some of your questions.
Thank you so much for a phenomenal introduction. I think I might speak for several of us on the call here when I say I smiled very, very big to learn that you are on the co-chair of the Moms Committee. That is so cool. Thank you for your awesome work. We need it. We need more of it. So before we move on to our Q&A, we're getting questions from various different live streams right now. I do want to just take a second to welcome all of our new folks on the call who didn't catch us in the first minute or so. Welcome, and thank you for sharing this virtual space with us. We're very excited to have you in the first virtual town hall in the 41st Legislative District of this session, of the 2022 session. So we're very excited to have you. And before we kick it over to some Q&A that we have coming in on various different streams, we did monitor over a couple of different emails. One of the questions that we were able to distill that kept reoccurring was telling us a little bit more about these committees, telling our constituents and talking to your constituents. They seem to be curious about what your committees are working on right now that you might be most excited about. Tell us some of the work that you're eager to continue moving into the next session as well.
So I'll jump in, and as far as education is concerned, the work this session has been a lot about stabilizing our education system. We did not expect that this year as well we would be involved with COVID. And unfortunately, for various reasons, as you know, variants, masking, vaccinations or no vaccinations, it's been really challenging for our school districts around the state. They've been handling contact tracing. They've been handling testing. They've been trying to keep enough teachers in the building to be even opening the doors, because when certain things happen, teachers have to quarantine, and then there's no teacher there, and then they're looking for substitutes. So it's been such a major challenge, and they've spent money on things that are not related to what they're usually related to, just to cover those extra people that they've had to hire from outside, food services, all kinds of issues. So what I had promised, well, you may not know, but I make a tour of our state's school districts with the education service districts. There are 9 different regions. I tour them, and what I promised them was no new stuff. We're going to try to keep it as simple as possible, not throw anything else over the wall and say, here's something else that you have to do. So we really have focused on finding out, what can we do to just keep things steady and make sure that the funding is there to keep them going on. Some of the things that we have done, which I'm excited about, financial literacy, students across the state have just begged for financial literacy. We think it's really important to anybody graduating high school to have that basis. So we did a bill on that, but we said not next year, the following year. So we're trying to push things out, letting our school districts get their feet under them. And I think that that's some of the important work that we're doing in that particular committee. And of course, in environment and technology, as you know, our governor and the chair of that committee, Senator Carlisle, were in Glasgow talking about what Washington State has done. So proud to be a leader in making sure that we are looking at the future, a future that we can leave for generations to come, where that habitat for humanity is somewhat protected. We know what the challenges look like, and we're there to really address them. So, My-Linh, you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. So I guess I can talk about finance a little bit because to what Lisa mentioned, is it okay? I can call you Lisa. It's so much easier to call you Lisa.
Well, we've been calling each other by our first name.
Right?
Let's be real. Let's be real.
Very good, very good. So like Lisa mentioned of her work on the tax structure work group, for me sitting in finance committee has been definitely out my comfort zone, but it's critically important for me. Last session, we passed an incredible legislation on working families tax credit, and I'm grateful that it came out of both House and Senate as a bipartisan effort. This session, I wanted to highlight two key important legislations coming out of finance, just to give our 41st sort of like a sense of what finance does. Because in the House, we separate finance and appropriation, whereas in the Senate, it's really being combined in ways and means. So in finance, one of the pieces that I happen to know that's critically important for the 41st legislative district, and actually for all the cities that sort of lined up that 405 corridor and up to 520. So in finance, we voted out of committee fully supportive of the sale deferred tax, so that we can fund and continue funding the continuation of the work on 405 167 and finishing up 520. The second piece of legislation coming out of finance that is for me is a wonderful thing is that we all agree, every single one of us getting out of this pandemic and living in the pandemic, but getting out of the pandemic is we all gonna sense some hurt, especially when it's come to economic, our bottom line, the inflations and all of those conversations, right? We experience it, especially our working family, especially our families who still have children to support and still in the K-12 system. And so I'm proud to vote on the legislation introduced by Representative Dave Paul to propose the holiday sale tax exemption for all item being purchased that is $1,000 of values or less, and it's critically anchored in the month of September for our families when they go out and purchase back to school of 2020. Oh my goodness, my year's going nuts. I think 2022 this year. And so those are sort of like the flavor of what coming out of Finance Committee. Representative Senn.
So in the Children, Youth, and Families Committee, we cover, as the name implies, all ages of kids. We focus on early learning. We focus on children's mental health. We focus on child welfare and juvenile justice. Last year, we passed some really fundamental legislation that I sponsored called the Fair Start for Kids Act, which was around expanding access to childcare. And that could have not been more important given the pandemic and what we called a she session, really, that more women lost their jobs than men. And in fact, women's employment went back to 1989 levels, and in great part because of lack of childcare. So when we've been looking at the numbers of what our increased eligibility and our decreased costs for our middle and lower income families, we're seeing that the cost of living for those families are decreasing by up to $20,000 a year by having more subsidy from the state for childcare. So it's really exciting to reduce the cost of living there. So we're watching that implementation this year, which is exciting. Also, what we're focused on a lot, since we did so much work on early learning last year, is we've been looking at adolescence and this kind of teenage space. And one bill that I've been working on is 1905, and it's to make sure that we don't release youth out of foster care or out of inpatient treatment or out of juvenile justice into homelessness. We really have, sadly, as we all know, a homeless problem. And the best way to prevent adult homelessness is to prevent youth from becoming homeless. And so the legislation is really geared around providing local tools and flexible funding to meet the individual needs of our young people and to make sure that they can get into housing. And we've really, again, been focusing on supporting youth who have left foster care in the past few years, making sure that that they have the supports that they need, because when they're, when our kids are launching out of our homes, that they call us and ask us for additional dollars or for some advice, or, can I come home and visit? Can I have a home cooked meal? And a lot of foster kids don't have that. So making sure that we're continuing to support them to ensure that they're stable, whether they're going to college or working or things like that. So really focusing on that adolescent space this year.
So I want to just jump in and for the audience, give a caveat. We have not taken the bills to the floor, the House bills to the floor yet. So they have to pass the Senate, and Senate bills have to pass the House. So we can be talking about things that some of them we feel pretty sure of. They're pretty good. We feel pretty sure of them, but they haven't gone yet. And it ain't over till it's over. So at that last day when we sine die, which is what we call our very last part of the session, then we know what's done. And well, actually, until the governor signs it, I think, we get it done, but then the governor has to sign it, and then we get the bill.
Well, it's a perfect segue into our next question, which is about local government gun laws and things like that. But before we move on to some Q&A, I'd just like to point out to all of our new viewers as well who are hopping in, welcome. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Also going to flag that if you haven't gotten a chance to submit your question yet, go ahead and just type it into the Facebook chat if you're joining us via Facebook, or you can please leave your questions in the comment section of YouTube if you're joining us via one of our YouTube streams as well. Okay, so moving on to our next question. We'll be monitoring the chat. Again, we'll be monitoring it to pull in any new questions from here on out. But our first question was, tell us about the Senate and House bills related to open carry and local government meetings. What are the differences between the House and the Senate versions, and will one likely be passed?
Well, I will take this because this is related to my legislation. So right now, the vehicle that is moving is House Bill 1630. And this bill, I'm so excited about this bill. This bill will ban open carry of weapons at city and county council meetings and at voting sites. It will also ban all guns at school board meetings and at ballot counting locations. Unfortunately, the testimony we heard was just from elected officials around our state was, shocking. Some council members who literally sit behind bulletproof glass, school board members who have had to, close down meetings and go online because of threats, because of things getting out of hand. Unfortunately, we've seen, lots of armed open carry intimidation across our state. And so this is a really important bill. And really excited about moving this forward. The Senate bill had something giving a little bit more local control or to make gun control decisions, and that bill didn't move forward. But there is a Senate gun bill the bill that passed the Senate that will ban the sale of high capacity magazines, which is critical. And then another bill that came out of the House was to ban ghost guns, which are untraceable, sometimes homemade, or the serial numbers have been rubbed off, to make those illegal in Washington state as well. So I would say those are the three top bills related to firearms that I think are really going to help improve the safety of our communities. And again, as a local, former local elected, and just as a participant in democracy, making sure that you can access democracy and access participation without fear of intimidation is absolutely fundamental to me.
Thank you so
And
much.
I'm going to add that by sitting in civil rights and judiciary, I get to vote on those bills. It's cool.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Representative Senn, for such a thoughtful response on it. Was there more commentary on the bill as well? Awesome. We'll move to our next question, which is climate related. In the last legislative session, the legislature passed major climate bills, including the Climate Commitment Act. How do you view the responsibilities of the state as compared to the federal government? And what additional climate policies do you favor?
Well, we have much more control over our local government than we do over the federal government, for sure. And so regardless of what happens at the federal level, if we can tie into it, that's fine. But we look at our state as our responsibility, and we do what we can here. I think that we have set a ground level of where we're going, set the objectives of what we're trying to do. And now it's a lot of follow-on bills in terms of how they fit together, how they work together to get us to our goals. So you're going to be hearing things continuously. One of the things that I got involved with House members from this area, as a matter of fact, some really smart people, very committed. We were talking about embodied carbon. Now, what you may ask is that, and that's making sure that the carbon that we produced is embodied into cement. Cement is a very high impactful entity. When you're making it, you're using a lot of negative environmental things. So if you can take the carbon and embed it in the cement when you're building, we're going to spend a lot of money on infrastructure. Think of all the roads, think of all the cement that's out there. If you can bury carbon in that and keep it in that, you're protecting the environment. And so we're working on that. I think that that's going to take us into the interim. After session, we'll be working on that all spring and summer and probably next fall. That's some of the kinds of follow-on things, that we're doing, which I think, is really important. We're still looking at biochar, which turns out to be, again, another thing that is very useful in discussing taking care of carbon. It's so comprehensive. We're looking at all the elements. We're looking at water because we're really a state that uses hydropower extensively. We're looking at siting energy sites. Where will we site them, and how will we site them across the state? I could go on forever. There's so many things that are out there that we're looking at it. Of course, we have been passing and will continue to pass things to do with packaging. When you think of the things, just think of the package. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of something which is really, I couldn't get it. I still can't get over it. This happened years ago. My husband, who was very ill in bed, decides he can just press a button and things will come to the house. He can order online. This is terrific. I open the door. There's a box. In the box is a bag. In the bag is wrapped up a whistle this size, that he had decided that he needed a whistle to be able, in case he needed to call me and I didn't hear his voice, he could whistle. Can you imagine somebody ordering and this comes to the house with all of that packaging? what a waste that is. And so, I'm making a joke of it, but this is serious stuff. So we're looking at getting rid of plastic bags, getting rid of the excess packaging that is just so wasteful in terms of having to handle it in terms of our byproducts just of living.
And because of the story that Lisa has just shared, I can't help but jump right in and share with the 41st that I've been working with our local high school, Newport High School and Mercer Island High School. Did you know that both of these high schools have the club that students participated in? They call themselves legislative club, and students learned the legislative process, and they learned how to write bill. And because in the last 2 years, due to the remote conditions of legislature, we stop having page coming to learn and participate in the legislative process. And so the student from the legislative club from Newport High School wrote a bill, and exactly to what you just say, Lisa, aimed at reducing packaging. And it's just absolutely amazing how our future generation has already engaged and participate
Yeah.
in this work.
And what a great civics lesson. Can you imagine anything better than that? That's wonderful. Yeah.
I would also just mention two things that just really, I think people can relate to as well. We've done legislation, we're doing legislation around making some of our like refrigerators and other appliances more environmentally friendly, more efficient. And so we're going from ensuring that buildings are more efficient to all the way down to, to our individual machines in our homes. And I'm really excited that actually the Mercer Island School District brought forward an idea that is moving forward and has gotten broad support to, and actually went through Lisa's committee to provide for our transportation levies, when we vote for our school levies, to allow school districts to purchase electric school buses to help reduce reduce pollution and reduce climate change, and to pay for the vehicle charging station infrastructure as well. So I'm really excited about that little bill that is also going to make a world difference.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So our next question, before we hop onto our next question here, I'd just like to point out that if you're having any trouble submitting a comment, we know that YouTube can, run into various different login barriers and things like that. You can feel free to hop over to our Facebook. That's might be a little bit more accessible. We're streaming on 3 different Facebooks right here in the 41st LD, and we're streaming on 2 different YouTube channels. So there might be plenty of ways for some input here. We are taking questions, so I just want to remind everyone we're still taking questions all the way up into the end of the night. So our next question was on Facebook, hoping you can comment on COLA for teachers and other public school educators. I believe that the House budget fully funds a cost of living increase for them, but the Senate budget might not. With budget projections coming in at almost $1.5 billion more than anticipated, do you think their COLA will be fully funded? Our teachers have been working under such incredible conditions, and I hope we can do this for them.
Yeah, I think that you can't even saying that, I think you can't even imagine the conditions that teachers have been working under. And one of the things I want to call on before I talk, I'll answer the question, but I also want to say that, especially when we were in distance learning, I just talked to so many teachers who talked about the fact that, teachers see what's going on when their kids are in front of them. And if things are happening to their kids or their kids' families, they get a sense of that and they can be there for their children. So when you're having this kind of interaction and you all of a sudden the screen goes dark, well, My-Linh what happened to her? Wait, she disappeared. I mean, that's what happens. I don't think this was planned, but
that was weirdly on cue. But
yeah,
but that has happened to teachers, and you can't tell how. I can only share with you how disturbing this is. They wonder, well, did the kid just drop off because the broadband wasn't good, or did something happen to the equipment, or did something happen to that kid? And so the stresses of this environment and what they have had to deal with is extraordinary. That being said, we're required by law to pay for the COLA. And so my sense is that I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be part of the Senate bill. What you see in the bills today is not what will be. There's like 100 amendments already. I've got 5 of them in the Senate bill. So you're going to see a lot of changes before we come to the end. And after we do all the work that we do in appropriations or in Ways and Means, then the parties will get together, because there is a Senate budget and there is a House budget, and they've got to reconcile both of them together. So there's one budget coming out for operating expenses.
Amazing. Thank you. Our next question is, what is your impression of the current needs in early childhood education?
Tana?
I will jump on this. The needs are immense. I really wish that we could be guaranteeing access to childcare for every single youth and family in our communities. We are working towards that, certainly expanding access to the state preschool program, which is called ECAP, that over the next 5 years, we'll get to a point where all kids who are eligible will be accessing that. We have increased dramatically pay for childcare providers, but of course it's definitely not enough. We've also added healthcare for our childcare workers, which is, if you can imagine, during the pandemic when you had kids who couldn't be vaccinated and you know those families needed childcare, and they were there taking care of our kiddos without healthcare access themselves. Pretty untenable. We really need to continue to make sure that we're supporting the childcare workers, that we're increasing access. And I'm really excited that we're going to be increasing supply, continue to increase supply, in part with $47 million of additional dollars in the capital budget to help build and expand childcare, because it's there's high demands all across the state. And we need the actual physical capacity. So at the same time, we need to make sure that we're recruiting more childcare providers. And that goes hand in hand with the pay and the benefits, because as we all know, in so many different fields, people can't hire people because you can go work at an Amazon warehouse and make a lot more money than you can in most fields. So it's really important that we're increasing pay, that we're ensuring that that healthcare, and that we're really supporting our childcare providers. So those are some of the really critical things that we need to do, that we're continuing to do. And one thing to any childcare provider who might be watching this, we have some really important investments that will help stabilize childcare. We did make some really strong investments, and we're also looking at some ways to address some background check issues. Again, very insider baseball, but if you're a childcare provider, you'll know what I'm talking about. So anyway, lots of work to be done. My-Linh?
Yes, and I just wanted to add to one more piece to this whole picture of childcare. I sponsor a budget proviso that would really expand the capacity of what we would call family providing childcare support. And it's not just family, it's really community coming together and providing childcare support. As Tana mentioned, it's really difficult to not only find facility within your community, but the workforce is a big issues. While many of our community who have that sort of building cultural expectation, mind you, it's sort of like we would like our grandparents who look after grandkids. We would like our neighbor who's staying home for one reason or another, look after their own children, would also extending that service for the neighbors within that apartment complex or the condo complex. And in our state, we're lucky that we already have that infrastructure built up. And so we as a state will fund and expand that so more of these community could access to the grant and being able to tap into more of these community building family building so that every single child have that best care when it comes to childcare services, so that parents can feel safe and comfortable as they come out to work.
I want to jump in just one little thing, because My-Linh, I was so pleased to see that. I think when we talk about all that we're doing for childcare and the childcare centers that we have, and we have a program of quality childcare in our state, Early Achievers, because we know it makes a difference. And I've been concerned there's 350,000 kids at any one time about who are in that 0 to 5 years of age needing that type of childcare. And the thing that really concerns me is that of that, the majority are not in ECAP or any of the systems that we currently have, or even private centers, et cetera. They are family, friends, and neighbors, the community oriented. But I think for the very first time, we're really looking at that other segment. There are childcare deserts where there are not centers to be able to take care of kids, but there's community support. And so building up that community support and supporting it so that it is not just kids getting together with adults, but that they get really support, and it's a quality experience for everyone. It's so important. So really excited. Thank you, My-Linh. I saw that bill come across. I was excited about it. I put it in our budget too, by the way.
Thank you so much. Also, on a similar note, this next question asks, what is the legislature doing to address the mental health crisis in schools?
So we have both bills, both in the House and Senate, to put additional help in our schools. We have the prototypical school model, which is a complex way of saying this is the money that we put out, and we put out money for various categories, and then the schools can do what they want with it. They can spend it how they seem best to spend it. It's local control. Well, in what we have now, we're putting additional funds in for counselors, for psychologists, for school nurses. I think that's the group. What else? I think that's pretty much the group. But we're saying to the school districts, here's the money for additional, and that's how you have to spend it. So we really want to make sure that kids at school have the supports that they need for mental health supports. And there are other things as well, but I think that's one of the things that we're doing with the school system you should know about.
Yeah, I also wanted to add another fun fact. I have an opportunity to really serving on a legislative work group, and I get to co-chair in that very specific group. It is called Mental Behavior Health and Suicide Prevention in K-12, and together with Representative Callens. The other Lisa so much. With Representative Calland, and we push forward that in this legislative sessions, we really anchor on the mental and behavioral health supports for not only our students in K-12, but definitely teacher and staff in K-12 as well, recognizing that secondary trauma again during the pandemic, and we could see how it's going to play out post pandemic. So you will see that hopefully as the reconciliation between the House budget operating budget and the Senate operating budget, the dollars that this legislature put forward to really show that we commit to ensure that our children, adult, and honestly every single Washingtonian being supportive as we getting out of the pandemic.
One thing I'll just quickly add to that was brought forward by the youth, and I'm really excited about it moving forward, is that passing legislation that allows youth to have a mental health day as an excused sick day, right? So just as if you're sick, you can be in, you've got strep throat or something and you stay home, that's an excused sick day, and allowing mental health to be a sick day as well. And so it's kind of amazing if you think about it that wasn't already possible, but it is critical and brought forward by our kiddos.
Thank you so much. Our next question came in regarding housing. Do you think the state of Washington and cities should be doing? I'm sorry, excuse me. What do you think Washington State and what do you think cities should be doing to support affordable housing for those with the lowest incomes?
Let me start off by saying that Washington ranks worst in the country in housing. We don't have enough of it. All kinds, affordable housing, unaffordable housing, you name it, we don't have enough of it. We have a really great economy, and so a lot of people have moved here. Our industry, we're number one in the country, but that has meant that we really just don't have enough housing. But you asked specifically about affordable housing, and this whole thing that we're talking about, I had looked at this a while ago, and I was really pleased that many of our communities, and certainly in the community I'm living in, they've had for years, they've had the ability to have ADUs. This is, these additional dwelling units on your property, even in private family homes. You can put, as you've seen, if you go around Mercer Island, for instance, you've seen a garage with an apartment on top of it that somebody could rent, or you've seen a separate dwelling, on the property. That's been around for years. And because we're on such hilly land, in many cases, some of us, I do, have a lower level, that's above ground because it's on a hillside, and that can be rented out as well. So I think that we're looking at many different ways of achieving more affordable housing for others. I know that we put into the budget, and I'm going to get it wrong. I know how to pronounce it. Starts with an I, guys. What is Ili? It's for taking over.
The apartments.
Yeah. That made it through the budget, or it's in the budget now. I think it's going to make it out, but that's for housing with wraparound services, because I think we've looked at the total picture and understood that eviction has really played a strong role in during the pandemic, et cetera. Although we've done a lot to put as much of a stopper on it as we can. Evictions is the number one reason that people become homeless. There are other issues, of course, but that's the number one reason that people just lose the ability to pay for their apartments. And then because of our housing situation, there's really no place for them to go. Some of the things that we're looking at is dealing with people who are on the street, and how can we move them into at least housing on the way to get them into permanent housing. So this is a very complex area, and I think I hope I'm sharing with you that we're addressing it in so many different ways. And My-Linh has put up permanent supportive housing. That's what we're aiming for. My-Linh, why don't you talk about that?
Oh my goodness. Be careful when I talk about housing. But I would really trying to be brief, and I just wanted to build on to what Lisa shared. I think at the state level, we're looking at we're really looking at the entire spectrum, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at the entire spectrum. We know that we have significant shortage of housing because we have that census data. We know that families who wanted to start like a starting family home versus or the downsizing for our senior, that sort of lacking middle housing or starting housing is definitely the sort of like the hard part for us to figure it out. For me, really the area that I really wanted to engage and figure out how do we continue to push forward is around housing that's supporting our workforce. I keep hearing from like all the school district in the 41st legislative district is definitely the pride of every single 41st constituent. We are so proud of our schools. We are so proud of our teachers. We're so proud of our kids. We're so proud of our police department. We're so proud of our fire department. But think about this. All of these departments like teachers, firefighters, police officers, they are having hard time to find housing and build their family here and be part of our community. And so workforce housing is critically important. Permanent supportive housing is about bringing individuals who are homeless or houseless with mental or medical conditions so that they can heal and move forward. Whereas workforce housing is another piece of the puzzles that we wanted to engage with our local government, because we want to support them to do the right thing for our communities. The question is how, not when. When was yesterday. The question is really how, and we couldn't wait to push that forward.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody saw the article that was talking about Bellevue being as expensive or more expensive than Manhattan. And I moved here from New York, like originally like 20 years ago. So I can tell you it was pretty expensive in Manhattan. And we all know how expensive it is in our areas. And, you know, we heard just extensively before session and during session from our business community that as they are recruiting people to come to our area, you know, Amazon talking about adding 25,000 people, they need somewhere to live. As My-Linh said, as people are downsizing, as people, you know, moving to our area, we need to make sure that our seniors have a place to live and that our kids, I want my kids to come home to move back to our area, but where on earth are they going to be able to afford to live? And so really addressing the housing crisis is critical. On the same hand, you know, how we do that is the big question. I'm excited that we put $500 million into the operating budget to send over to Capital to build more affordable housing. But frankly, in our area, it's just about the quantity of housing in addition to serving those affordable housing and workforce housing. And frankly, when we look at some of the decrease in enrollment in our school districts, it's also partly because families cannot afford to live in our area. The mayor of Bellevue told me that in Bellevue, 73% of single family homes have one or two people living in them, meaning like a single person. Partly these are, you know, families that may have had kids that grew up and now people are aging in place, which is great, except that they, you know, because they don't have anywhere to go or to downsize. And that means there's no kids in those homes, which means less enrollment in our schools, which might sound great, but that just provides a financial difficulty for our schools as well. So it's a really complicated situation. There are lots of bills that moving forward to help landlords, to help renters, to build more housing. And, you know, and our cities are all very different. And so there is no one size that fits all. And yet we also need to address the housing crisis. So lots more discussions to come, you know, in the following years for sure.
You know, I want to jump in because I've got this idea. I really think one of the issues that My-Linh's just laughing at me, but she's so one of the problems, one of the issues in our area is the cost of land. You know, you can have, I've seen houses that in Seattle that are, you know, almost $1 million house for sale. But I mean, you would not even want to live in this thing, but the land is so expensive. So what do we know about Mercer Island? We know how to build things over the highway. We have a lid. We know how to do this. I'm talking about air rights. Why are we not building on top of the highway? It would really reduce the noise. Don't laugh, but okay, putting it out there. We got to be creative, guys. This is all hands on deck.
You make me think of the movie. The movie, I think it's, oh my God, I'm going to butcher the title. I think like Castle, something about a castle, the castle that built on the cloud that is move around, but people live in it, and you know, you never know.
Okay, well, So I keep going
Maybe we should
around.
move on to the next question.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so we have just going to flag that we have 9 minutes left in our virtual town hall here in the 44th Legislative District. It's been a pleasure being joined by everybody. We will be kicked off in just about 9 minutes or less, and we have a couple more minutes for questions, and then we'll go into our outro. So our next question is on public safety. What is the legislature doing about crime, violence, and safety?
Well, I can start on this, and then Lisa can jump in. I'm very happy that Representative Johnson, who introduced House Bill 1310 in last session, really that the underlying bill is about clarify standards of when force is being used in policing. However, during the interim, because there was certain language that was ambiguous, that it needed clarifications, and Representative Johnson put forward House Bill 1735, which really clarified within those standards that passed and now become laws. It does not, but in any shape or form, prohibit our peace officers where when they need to use force within a reasonable care standards to help support our child welfare and other community caretaking functions. And in public safety, we continue to look at issues like the catalytic converter, right? And Representative Reuse is continuously engaging with stakeholder and working toward a more vibrant and more bringing more stakeholders into that conversation, so that when this come out, our state probably is going to be the first state that have a clear directions of how we ensure these crimes need to stop and being dealt with.
So one of the things I thought we just listened tonight in the Ways and Means Committee, we are either the 49th or the 50th state at the bottom of the barrel in terms of the number of law enforcement officers per population. We have fewer officers than almost any other state. There may be one even worse than we are. So I think that raising the number of officers is one of the things that we are talking about supporting. We need to support, and that doesn't include just the training, the funding of those officers through sales tax manipulation at the local level, so that local communities can afford to hire more people. But additionally, we have to make sure that we can provide the training for them. And so funding the police academy as well. And I think that is one of the things that's really important. It is not a question of how the laws are interpreted or anything else. We just have to have feet on the street that is somewhere near, the middle of the pack in terms of other states of like size.
Thank you. And then one of our final questions here, as we transition over into our outro phase here shortly, was how has the pandemic highlighted the need for more and better broadband in our state? And what are some ways the state is attempting to increase access to reliable broadband?
Wow.
Well, I'll just jump in because I don't have
jump in before I jump in.
Relevance, except that My-Linh dropped off, and that might have during the middle of this, and so that might impact that. And Lisa, my colleague on the other side of my screen, has been an unbelievable leader about broadband. There you go. I'm turning it to you, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much. And I've been working with a counterpart in the House, Representative Gregerson. In fact, I'm just working on her bill to make sure that we can get it out of committee, because it's really what we have been focused on is where there isn't broadband. And we have about 20% of our state, we just don't have it. So we created the broadband office. We're going after federal money. I'm working with the broadband office. They're really, I'm very happy with where they are right now in going after a great deal of IIJA money that will be coming from the federal government. But in addition to that, we realize that there's other issues involved with access, and access is devices. Access is affordability. Access is being able to understand language-wise what it is, how to get it, and what is going on. And so there is a major bill. I know Representative Gregerson has been working with about 100 people in terms of stakeholder outreach. Equity is a really important layer that we're adding in. It's not just a question of where don't we have any broadband, but where don't we have broadband where it already exists, but you can't get it because you can't afford it, or you don't have a device, or you are disabled, or you're a senior who just doesn't have access to it. So we're looking at a much bigger picture. I'm very excited about where we're going. I thank her for her leadership in this particular area, and we're going to make sure her bill gets through.
Thank you so much. And just a quick follow-up on that, because I know there were some companions that might have been with it as well. We had a couple of folks tonight ask what happens to bills that don't make it through this session.
So we have a 2-year budget cycle and a 2-year legislative session cycle. And so any bill that doesn't make it through this session by the middle of March is officially dead and would have to be reintroduced the following year if we want to continue to or start to reconsider that legislation. So bills aren't dead until the very end of session. But if it doesn't pass this year, then, and it's something that we want to work on, it's really the interim is what we call it between the end of session and the beginning of the next session. That's really when we do stakeholder outreach, where we listen to and hear from constituents about issues that are important to them, and then try and craft legislation based on that input. Just like anything, the more input we have from the more diverse stakeholders, the better the legislation is. If we only talk to those who are advocates for it and we don't talk to the opposition, then the bills are not, we're going to hear day one what's wrong with the bill, and you should have heard about that during the interim. And that's definitely some of the things that happened with some bills that didn't pass this year that had some serious roadblocks. So it's really important that we work with all the stakeholders during the interim on key bills, and they would have to be introduced next year.
Took me 3 years to get my first big bill through.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. It's not very common for big pieces of legislation to move forward in one term. It often takes 3 to 4 years, and of course could be longer depending on the bill.
Yeah, and not all bills die because it wasn't worked thoroughly. Sometimes it's simply the time factor and priority. And you may know, at least on the House side, last session and this session, our priority has been clearly articulating, focusing on moving our system toward a more equitable system, certainly looking into how we could support public health during the pandemic, and definitely the economic stability of our state as a whole.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Senator Wellman, did you have something to add as
well?
No,
I was just looking at the timer. And it's like, no, we have so much more to talk about, and it's running out of time.
We do. Unfortunately, we just reached that time. My timer's ticking at me, and just out of fear of not getting kicked off of this program, we would like to switch over to our outros. Senator, would you like to kick it off?
Well, I want to share one thing that I didn't get a chance to talk about is a bill for the motion picture industry, which I'm really excited about because I think we used to be a player. We haven't been a player. We have to play the game the way everybody else does and step up with some funding for it. So I've got a big bill in that area, and one little bill that I think is going to make a huge difference because I think that the future is digital, and I want every kid, whether they're in our public school system or they're in an institution, and we have some kids in institutional ed, I want to make sure that they have access to computer science as well. And so those are two things very far apart that I'm working on. I'll turn it over.
And I just wanted to do a shout out to our business community as well. We didn't get a chance to talk to all the work that we're doing for small businesses this year, but it is substantial, and excited about a blockchain work group that I've been working on with Senator Brown in the Senate to really make sure that we continue to be a technology hub and that we're recognizing the consumer benefits and the business benefits, and we've got the workforce in place to make sure that we are meeting that challenge.
And I'm gonna continue the conversation, being still the only refugee elected to serve in Washington State Legislature. I'm pushing out to support the grassroots organizations to support them as far as their infrastructure, so that they can come out and continue providing wraparound services for not only the refugees who come into our state as the most welcoming state, but also the Afghan refugees who are coming to our state in the thousands. And I'm grateful that the governors include the budget in his request. But this is specifically what I'm working on is specifically supporting our Washington grassroots organizations, and I'm proud to sponsor that particular legislation, and I'm so happy that our senator and my wonderful seatmate, who sitting in the appropriation and ways and means, who have that vote to get the funding for this important work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we were going to end our very first of the 2022 legislative session virtual town hall here in the 41st legislative district. Thank you so much to our local representatives and our local senator for the time. And also thank you to the comms team and the LAs that were on the background monitoring so many comments and so many constituent interactions. It's our goal to just get our elected officials closer to you. And I think tonight we achieved that. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.